Welcome to Joe's Happy Hour, a show about markets and life hosted by Joe Fahmy. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be regarded as personalized investment advice or relied upon for any investment decisions. Joe Fahmy is an employee of Zor Capital, and he and his clients may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast. All opinions expressed by Joe are solely his own and do not reflect the opinions of Zor Capital. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on this program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Kevin Churko.
Joe Fahmy.
Khloe Churko.
Joe Fahmy.
How you doing?
An amazing father, daughter, music, business, just everything. You guys are an amazing team, and thank you for being here.
Thanks.
You, quick introduction. You are an award-winning record producer, sound engineer, musician, crypto miner.
At one time,
stock trader.
At one time, stock trader. I've done a lot.
I've done a lot of things. And
bad stock trader, but
the list of people you guys have worked with is, no pun intended, off the charts. Ozzy Osbourne, Five Finger Death Punch, Disturbed, Hello Darkness, My Old Friend, Shania Twain, Slash, etc. The list, I could go on. We could be here for an hour. Why don't you give the audience a little bit of an intro about yourself and anything you want to tell them about yourself?
I think you covered it all. I mean, started out as a musician and evolved into recording engineer, evolved into producer, evolved into studio owner, and then evolved into all sorts of things. Like you said, from crypto, I used to have miners in my machine room that would be going 24/7. I'd have to wake up in the middle of the night because in those days it was just that little Raspberry Pi and like these cards, right? So it was quite a feat to keep them going. But it was fun for a while. They get outdated in 6 months, so it was over at that point in time, and it was too much work for me to keep doing. And then eventually, diversified. I got, my son Kane, who's a co-producer of mine, and then Khloe's involved more in the business side in the sense that, we've done some fun things like opened a restaurant and actually, did okay at that. So Khloe kind of started kind of around the dinner table more, just, hearing what's going on in the business, and eventually became really valuable in the sense that she knows where all the bodies are buried and she knows the players and, went to business school, learned on the job, and all of a sudden we had a restaurant. All of a sudden she manages me. All of a sudden she's business manager for some of my clients. All of a sudden she's managing her son, which was a little bit of a story, but I guess we can't really officially tell that one. No. Can we? How you scooped your brother as a client. But so
that's awesome.
That pretty much covers it all.
Cool.
Or most of it.
Khloe Churko, you're the brains behind this entire operation. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say so. I wasn't always, though, but I mean, he gave a good intro. I started working, I think I was 18 when I started working at the first studio we had as an intern. I was scrubbing the toilets and making sure everyone had water and Monster energy drinks and all the things. And then kind of just evolved from there, started booking the studio. And then when he bought the new studio, started running that. He was out of town. He's in Mexico. And I just got a guy who handed me a bunch of keys and went, have fun. And no one's in town except me. And so I'm just trying to figure out how to run a 14,000 square foot studio overnight. And then that evolved into doing more business. And now I do business management full time for musicians and producers and songwriters. And I make sure everyone doesn't run out of money.
Royalties, negotiating, valuations, music catalogs.
I do a lot of collections, like chasing money that people are owed. I make sure they get paid. I'm really good
for the
at that.
musicians.
Yeah. So that could be labels, other artists, anybody. I mean, someone's owed money somewhere at all times. So
they call her Collections Khloe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the nickname.
And then the boring stuff like the bookkeeping and the tax filing and all that, I do that as well. But for the day to day, like so I always say, I just make sure creatives can be creative and make sure they don't run out of money.
So you grow up around a music family, and I know sometimes if a family, let's say, I don't know, the dad's a doctor and they want their kid to be a doctor and all, like, did you feel not forced into it, or is it something you really wanted to do, or just kind of fell into it? I'm curious how that evolved.
She ran from it.
I didn't do it.
She ran it from it as pretty quickly in the early days, and then one day says to me, why can't we have a family business like other people have? I'm looking around
So you
the studio.
didn't want to do it.
No, I did everything but I went to EMT school after high school. I was in like retail for a while. I was just like store manager for retail stores. I worked airport security. I was a TSA agent for a minute.
Really? You were TSA.
I did a lot of food service. I mean, a lot of customer service based jobs. And yeah, I don't.
Moved back to Canada.
I went back to Canada as an adult for a little bit too, and so then it was coming back from Canada.
We're not adults yet, so we don't understand that.
And yeah, when I was coming back from Canada, when I was there last, I just said maybe. I guess that's what I said, but I don't remember that conversation.
It was almost exactly. Why don't we have a family business?
I remember when I was maybe like 14 or 15, because that's when I started working. I worked as soon as I could. You had told me, you know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, but you're not going to tell me yet.
Yeah, you're doing it.
And
completely.
And you said that to me a couple of different times. I know what you're going to be when you grow up and what you're going to do, and then I just kind of started doing it when I came back. And I think at the time you needed help at the studio, so I just kind of picked up and started. And like I said, it grew over time, and now I know everything.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, no, I definitely didn't want to because I wasn't musical. I'm not a musician. I don't play. I don't write.
You don't play any instruments.
No, so I
not necessarily true that she isn't musical.
I took lessons and stuff throughout my childhood, but I don't actively play or write or anything. And so I think I always was kind of like, that's not my thing. Like I'm not the musician. I'm going to do some other stuff instead. And then I found out that I could do business instead of the musical part.
So she enjoyed counting money more than playing guitar.
So you manage him, and you have to deal with a lot of the music and the egos of the bands and all this stuff. How do you deal with conflicts between like separating family from, like business and stuff like that? Because like if I get emails from my mom, I wish there was an unsubscribe button on it, but I don't have the heart to tell her, so I kind of have to deal with it. But that's an email. How do you guys deal with?
I should probably leave the room for a little bit, and she can talk freely then. Because when you're talking about the egos of the bands, probably the ego she had to deal with the most was actually mine.
Was yours?
But you can carry on from here.
I think overall it was really good. I can probably count on one hand how many maybe tense moments we've had of I was irritated or he said something that irritated me or bothered me or something. We've always worked really well together and with Kane too. But I think 'cause we were always just talking about business. That's just all we talk about most of the time. So it wasn't really hard to transition that to real work and real business.
When there is a conflict, she wins pretty much is what you're saying.
Not always. We've had a few conflicts that we had to work out. One time I called a lawyer even. I had to call a lawyer once.
Called her lawyer on me.
Well, she didn't call TSA, so you're okay. That would have been worse.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your journey from engineer, originally musician, as you said, into engineer, evolving into award-winning producer. Talk to me about how do you go from the first step of you're playing music to wanting to, you worked under Mutt Lange, is that correct?
Yeah.
A legendary producer, like beyond legendary.
He's, I mean, it worked out perfectly because he's my favorite producer of all time. So even though I was already like over 30 by the time I started working for him, so I had already done a lot.
So was that your first like
let's call
protege you worked under, or you worked before under him?
Yeah, he was my first. I mean, other than that, it's me feeling around in the dark, reading in those days magazines, trying to learn from other people when I could. Just listening to records and just trying to get it like that, and not even really knowing how. So in that process, you kind of develop some different kinds of things too. But I was a musician first and a drummer, and so when he hired me, that was one of the things he was looking for was good time. Being able to understand the music side of things, not just becoming a recording engineer, not just hitting buttons for him, but actually understand the musical side of it. So working under him for those years was really amazing because he's the best of the best. And you have to work fairly hard, fairly fast, quickly to get caught up. So that was kind of like my college. And I'm not a college graduate, but I am from the College of Mutt Lange, and that was enough to kind of, teach me mostly, at least give me a launching pad for doing the things that I do now. And I, it ended up great. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better life than I've had.
Yeah, and he's legendary with Back in Black, some Def Leppard, like Pyromania, all these legendary records. I know he's worked with Shania, I believe, and some other,
Yeah.
it's a lot of rock
Shania,
stuff.
Bryan Adams, Foreigner, The Cars.
The list-
think of the
list
biggest
saints.
albums from the 80s until, a few years ago. I mean, he's kind of done them.
And he's the one who's, that's amazing. So you got to basically observe and learn from, kind of pick up the crumbs from one of the absolute best in the business.
Exactly, yeah.
And then,
And I did pick up crumbs, too.
and then from there to deciding to go off on your own, from a sound engineer or whatever you did under him to actually taking the step to produce on your own. Talk about that.
Well, I mean, I knew that's always what I wanted to do. I mean, first of all, most of us get involved because we all want to be the rock stars.
Yeah.
But then I had a family young, and so I thought, well, I don't really want to go on the road. I wasn't going to be a rock star in any case, but I can be in the studio. So that starts that process, and then eventually with Mutt, I'm learning how to do it, realizing I want to do that. I was doing it before I started working for Mutt. He just made me better at it. So, and he was a generous enough guy that when I told him I was ready to strike out on my own, he helped me get into America and, hooked me up with his immigration lawyer, all that sort of thing. And so, but he gave me the fundamentals and the tools to be able to pitch up to LA and say, here I am. And of course, nobody hired me. So, but some people hired me as an engineer still, as a Pro Tools guy. Pro Tools is the recording platform that everybody records on now mostly.
Okay.
But I had the skill. So no matter what session I ended up in, no matter who hired me, I was able to do that job. And then eventually, I guess my first real big production job was the Ozzy record that I did. And that kind of started me in that genre more as well. I grew up as a rock guy. But, you do different things in your career. I did everything from polka bands to country bands. I mean, you name a genre, I've done it.
Yeah.
And probably not very well. But, you learn something from all those choices or all those situations that you're in. And eventually, you get the call, you get the big gig, and it goes from there. And it's not even a matter of one call. It's a matter of multiple calls. I thought after I did that album, everybody was going to call and my phone would be ringing nonstop. We had a joke in the household for a while that every time the phone rings, is this the big call? Is this a big call? And it was very rarely the big call. But, a succession of hits and good records, from that record moving on to some of the other bands in this moment, Five Finger, just going on with that. And as those bands became more and more successful, then the other bands like Disturbed started calling.
So would you say after doing several albums that kind of built your credibility to get the big calls from different groups and so forth?
Yeah, I think the success that I've achieved has kind of been consecutively, like being consistent, so that any record that someone does, I work as hard as I can, do well for that client. And then if it does well, obviously those people keep coming back. So, I've been doing this for, a few decades, and yet my client list really isn't that large in the sense that, say, with Five Finger, I did 8 records with them. With In This Moment, I did 6. And now my son's doing, the next 2, right? Or he did 1, and now he's working on 1 now. Disturbed, I did 2. Ozzy, I did 2. Hell Yeah, I did 3. So it's like, I think that was also a little bit of the keys to the success is, as a Canadian, we can diffuse situations generally fairly easy and don't have to take people's sides. I mean, it's a little bit of a battle when you're in there in the studio and there's a lot of creative people and they're all trying to get their point across, and they all want to do it the way they want to do it. So that's, I think, a skill that I developed early on, that I could keep everybody happy and everybody wins, and because of that, they came back again, and then they have some success with whether it's airplay or sales or whatever. It worked.
Yeah.
And then, honestly, I just kept doing the same people over and over again until finally I passed it on to my son.
That's awesome.
And honestly, that's kind of Khloe's skill too. I mean, she didn't really mention this that much, but she's kind of the whisperer to a lot of these people, to high energy, high level, high ADD, people, artists.
So instead of the dog whisperer, it's the music whisperer?
I got a call once from a manager, and she goes, "Hey, I was talking to someone, and they said you're doing business management now, and you're really, really good with working with difficult people." And I go, "Is that what I'm known for now?" And I think we both. I think I get that from him. We're very logical, reasonable people, and we know how to read a room and can pick up the vibes and know what to say and what not to say at what times when someone's in their creative mode or upset about something or happy about something. And that translates when you're dealing with, as a business manager, I'm the closest person to that person. I know their whole life through their bank statements. I can tell you exactly how their days go by looking at their bank statements. And I know all the secrets. And so I think it's same in the studio. You're learning all the secrets about people when they're writing their songs and pouring their hearts on the table. But
that's a gift to men. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say there was one little story that Khloe has that I love telling.
Please.
That and she has had enough clients that, I'm not giving away who it was, or I'm not offending anybody, but she came in one day and said, "Dad, I need some advice." I go, "What?" She says, "I got this client, and I know he's doing a lot of drugs because I can see the ATM withdrawals, and it's $40 this day, $40 that day, $40 that day, and so I have a bit of a problem." I said, "What problem is that?" She says, "Well, should I tell him if he buys in bulk, he'll get a better deal?"
I did end up telling him that. I did finally say, like,
that's good advice.
Can we buy, and if you're going to do the drugs, can we buy larger quantities instead of like daily purchasing? And we did, but
that's good. You're like a life coach then.
Yeah. But I still track the expenses, so that way I can show that person how much they're spending in drugs. So on their profit and loss reports, it'll show up as like vitamins or something not as obvious, so that they can see that too. Because it's also knowledge is important to know how much money they're spending on that kind of thing.
But it's factual information, not just to encourage them to quit using the drugs for themselves and for the betterment of themselves, but financially, this is the impact it has on your career and your life. Sure. Now you can't get that new microphone, you can't get that extra piece of gear that you have to cut your expenses on the tour because you're doing too many drugs.
Yeah, no, it's like they're humans just like everyone else, and they have their vices.
Unless you're writing hits with the drugs, then keep on doing drugs. No, I'm kidding. Don't do drugs.
But that's a gift to be able to manage egos, because like I just think quickly of the sports analogy where Phil Jackson was like one of the few that could coach Michael Jordan,
right?
And then eventually with Kobe Bryant, like those are two of the biggest superstars and egos. Then it takes a certain gift to be able to manage some of the big musicians. That's cool that you have that ability.
Even think of the Beatles. I mean, I couldn't imagine with four such talented people what George Martin had to go through.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it kind of ended fairly quickly when things started going wrong. They started going wrong fast, with those personalities. I'm sure George helped to keep everybody on the straight and narrow for some time.
Yeah. I'm fascinated with the process from start to finish of putting together a record. And I'm going to ask a lot of stupid questions and try to simplify it for the audience, because, I mean, I know a little bit about music, haven't played like in high school and all that crap, but I've never put a record together. So in the beginning, who decides the credits on the record? Because I've noticed different, and I'll give you my examples and correct me if I'm wrong. Like Appetite for Destruction is one of the #1 selling debut albums of all time, and they split it, from what I understand, 5 ways. Sometimes it's just the singer and the guitarist. Sometimes the producer's involved. Sometimes it's the band. I just noticed there's different deals. Is that a fair statement?
That's completely fair. Everything, it's like it's a free-for-all in a sense. There's no rules. There's no definite structure. This is how it goes. I mean,
okay.
I have my rules. Kane will have his rules. And Khloe manages quite a few people who she has to deal with those negotiations as well. I mean, many times in my career, I can sort of set my guidelines at the very start, that it's either a project where, you know what, I'm going to write on some of these things, and I get writing credit on the things I write on. And in my sense, I believe writing is a little bit different. It's not about how many words you write. If I were to change Back in Brown, the song that used to be Back in Brown, to Back in Black, that's pretty valuable, right?
Yeah.
So, or someone else, helping my song out too. So I look at it as if we're all contributing. 4 people wrote the song. It's a 25% split, and that's that. Lots of bands, successful bands, do it that way too. They just share all the writing, and that way prevents egos from getting involved, or from one guy living in the mansion and one guy living in the trailer park.
Yeah.
Because everybody shares in the profits. But other people don't, and other people say, I wrote this song, you wrote that song. I've even had a client in the early days only say, okay, I've added up the words that I wrote and the words that you wrote, and you get 7.5%, and I get, whatever.
Based on the words,
Based on the amount of words.
Like it's high school, you have to write 1,000 words or 500 words.
And I just looked at him funny and said, what?
That still happens. I still see that though, where they'll just break up exactly how much they wrote of every song, or they'll maybe give a percentage to the chorus, a percentage to some of the verses, and whoever wrote what brought it in. It's different even in like pop music and hip hop because there's so many writers sometimes. Sometimes you have 15 writers on a song. You're not splitting equally.
Right.
If it's for a major pop artist or a major artist, sometimes they want 50%, even if they didn't write it. They want 50%, and then the remaining 50% gets split amongst the other writers that actually wrote the song. So, I mean, I've seen it go so many different ways. There's not really an industry standard of how it goes.
That's what I was going to ask. So there's not like, usually it's the guitarist who does the music, the songwriter does the lyrics, and they're mostly getting the credits, and then the rest of the band is the bass player, drummer, rhythm guitarist is like hired guns, so to speak? Or is that normally, but you're saying there's no industry standard?
I don't believe there's an industry standard. It can be, because even within a band, sometimes the bass player is the one that's writing all the songs. Sometimes it's the drummer writing all the songs.
Oh, okay.
It really just depends on who's there's usually still a few people in a band that stand out as being maybe the stronger writers.
Yeah.
You'd probably agree with that.
Yeah, and I think it relates to when that band started. If they were high school kids and all buddies and they started a band, chances are they decided to split it all.
Yeah.
And eventually the writer wakes up one day and goes, wait a minute, I'm doing all the work. I'm doing all the interviews. Why are we sharing all this? And that's probably the point where the band starts breaks
up. Yeah.
But you can have a band like Van Halen that if I'm correct, they split it four ways. No matter who wrote what, they're all contributing. They're all in the room doing it. Any band I've been a part of has split it equally. But if you've been in a band for 15 years and then you hire that new bass player, and you don't need him to write the songs, should he be getting a fair cut? Probably not, but probably you make that decision ahead of time, saying this is what we're doing. We're going to cut you in for a little piece. If you start writing more, we'll cut you in for more. But there's no point in giving away that sort of thing if you've been there, working your ass off for 15 years, and all of a sudden the new guy comes in who has no history and no credit. Right?
I've heard Coldplay, they split it 4 ways, and even though Chris Martin's the only recognizable person, the reason because it's funny, it's not funny, it's interesting you make the point about once they start arguing is maybe when there's some tension or split, because from what I've understood, they've stuck together because they just split it equally. And a funny story is I heard like the drummer or the bass player was walking up on stage for a show, and the security's like, where are you going? And he's like, he had to show his, like, I'm in the band. Yeah. Like, I'm on stage in 2 minutes because he's so unrecognized. This is not recognizable, but that's how they get along, is because they split everything. So my question is that decided before they start the process? Or is like a band gets together, they want to put an album together?
In my case, I would like to keep it really simple, like for people not to have to overthink that sort of thing. I want everybody to contribute as much as they can without fear of not getting credit, or even if they're not in the writing, or if they're the writer, you don't want that guy thinking, I can't take someone else's idea because then I have to start paying him, right? You want the best song you can possibly get, no matter if it's the drummer, the bass player, or me, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's much healthier to come up with an agreement ahead of time. If it's a record, you can't always do that. And Khloe has writers as clients and producers as clients that, like in my situations, mostly I'm working with bands. So it's quite easy.
And you're doing a whole album.
And I'm doing a whole record. So the other thing is you don't want some guys writing the hits and some guys not writing the hits.
Okay.
And honestly, in some producers and writers, those guys may contribute more to the hit songs because that's really why they're there. That's why they're being paid for. And maybe they don't contribute as much to the non-hits. But, for me, I've just always thought family pots are better for creativity and for everybody to work hard and be able to throw ideas out. You don't know who's going to have the best idea. Khloe may have a different opinion.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. A lot of my writers that I work with will do just one-off songs, or they'll be even there's some of these publishing companies do like writing camps where they'll bring like 200 writers out and they'll just write for 10 days all these songs that they're going to pitch to larger major artists. I would say it's still usually agreed on prior or at the beginning of that session. So if there's 5 people in the room and they're going to start a writing session for 4 hours, they're usually going to split equally, pending whatever artist picks up that song may want a chunk off the top.
Okay.
So they're going to split what's left over. So if Selena Gomez picks up a song and she wants 50% writing, even though she wasn't in the room, she takes her 50%, and then whoever actually wrote the song will split the remaining. And so that's usually whoever's in the room at the time the song starts is usually agreed on. I have seen people get finicky, like I said, counting words, counting verses, or they agree at the end because they didn't know. Sometimes you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know you just wrote a hit song when you write it, and then they start getting picky about who wrote what and how much should they get. But generally, I would say it's agreed on prior, or at least by the time people are exiting that room, like when they're leaving the studio, it's agreed on.
Before we get to the next step, you have a unique side to this because you don't just produce, you perform and contribute to the writing on a lot of your albums, correct?
Pretty much for most of the last 15, 20 years, my contracts are that if, for the people who want to hire me, they're generally hiring me to help them be the best they can be. So I don't distinguish in the sense that if they bring a song that needs a little bit of help, I'm going to help them write that song. If they don't need the writing, then I don't have to get involved. But, I'm there to help. I'm there to fill the holes of any deficiencies that they have. And in some cases, sometimes that means playing too.
You're being humble. I heard you play on a lot of the records.
Well, but generally,
and you play multiple instruments on the records.
Generally, they do it. They play it. I've been lucky enough to be with some really, really great players and musicians. And sometimes I'm doing more of a utility thing where I don't want to call the guy back in to change 2 guitar chords that go chung, chung, and he lives in another city. We can't just fly him in for that. So I'll just pick up a guitar and do it quick and we're done.
Okay.
Right. So sometimes it's out of utilitarian kind of reasons, not just because I can do it better, because most of the time I can't.
What's the industry standard for the producers that do the record? It's like, you hire the studio and they mix everything, or is that also depend and negotiable? Like, without getting too personal,
Yeah.
I just don't know if when the credits are out, does the producer usually get some, or they're just paid to do the record? Like, I don't know what the industry.
There is no industry standard, unfortunately. I've seen deals from all over the map of how they go, especially now with music being made so quickly, or people aren't really doing full albums anymore. A lot of the time, they're just releasing singles. I've seen everything, so there's not really a standard. It is really a case by case.
And in some cases, who has leverage? If you're hiring or you're co-writing something with, some kind of amazing writer that's just had the last top 10 songs, that guy's going to call the shots. And if he wants 50% in order to get in a room with you, if you're a band and there's 5 of you in the band and you're getting that awesome writer to come in and help you, he's probably taking 50% and the band's sharing 50%.
That's something I didn't understand until, some of our mutual friends explained to me, like Bruno Mars would write a song for CeeLo Green, or Toto wrote Human Nature for Michael Jackson, these types of stories. When that happens, do sometimes they just hire someone to write the song, or do they say, you know what, I wrote this would be better if so-and-so sang it like this? That's very common, though, in the industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say all of the above. In many cases, even within a band, we'll write a song. I try to get artists not to forward think, not to be too critical and judging what we're doing too soon, so that by the time that we get to the end of it, they can say, if it's not a song that fits into their format and fits into their idea of who the band is, well, let's not waste it. Let's pitch it to somebody else. Maybe they'll like it. Maybe this other band will like it. And if that band happens to connect with it, or that singer does, then it becomes like bonus art, bonus career, bonus writing, right? Yeah. And in some cases, some guys are just they're so prolific and fast and so great. Like say a guy like Prince back in the day, he could write a lot of songs for a lot of people that he didn't want to sing, but they were still great songs. Why not use those songs?
Yeah.
And artists wanted to use those songs. So
okay, so now the record's done. The next step is, how does revenue come in for the band and for everybody, besides the obvious selling of albums and selling of CDs and all that? What are the different sources, and how has streaming changed? Because I know there's Spotify and YouTube and XM and all that. So I'm fascinated on the different, just because my audience is kind of business related. Yeah. What's the revenue that comes in after a record's done, besides record sales?
It's so varied at this point. Most of the income is streaming now, right? All the Spotify's, the Apple Musics.
I have some
YouTube.
musician friends, sorry to interrupt, that hate Spotify, that produce records, and they're like, I can't fucking stand those people.
Yeah.
And it's nothing against Spotify. I'm just saying, like, streaming has affected things, I'm sure. But go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
it's greatly affected things.
It's affected it, but you also have to understand that, back when Napster first came out and people could burn CDs and stuff, I remember going to a cousin's house and he's showing me all the music he's listening to, and he opens his CD library and it's like everything's burnt. So nobody's getting paid on that. Yeah. And then, other friends, as soon as Napster was out, they're downloading music for free. Nobody's getting paid on that. So I think the philosophy about the streaming services, well, better for some people to start getting paid and for us to just, allow people to have access to everything. And that way, a subscription rate works well, like a model where someone pays $10 a month, $15 a month and get anything. People are willing to pay that. Now, unfortunately, because of that situation, the money is a lot lower than it was. And if you're doing a record and if there's 10 writers or 10 producers on one album and only 2 are hits, well, those guys that aren't getting their song streamed aren't getting paid. Whereas in the old days, if you had one cut, the worst song on a hit record, you were still pretty rich because they're paying every time they buy that record, that CD, they're paying for that song, right? You're getting paid on that
For
song.
the entire
Because they're buying the whole album.
Okay.
Yeah, you might only have one song on a record, meaning not an artist, but as a writer.
Yeah.
And some other song is the hit song. If you're on a Michael Jackson album, there's probably, in those days, probably 4 or 5 hits.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of songs that weren't
No,
hits.
every Michael Jackson song was a hit. No, I'm kidding.
No, I mean, in many
No,
cases,
I know. You
yeah.
put a
but
record out and let's say 2 or
Yeah.
3 hits, but because they buy the
Yeah.
whole album, you get paid on everything.
But let's say it's Dexy's Midnight Runner, Come on Eileen, that
Yeah.
had one song as a hit song,
Yeah.
I believe, in their entire career.
Right.
Everybody else that had a song on that album made quite a bit of money because you bought that album.
You had to buy the physical CD when
Okay.
you wanted to listen
That's a
to
good
it.
trivia question. Name another song besides Come On Eileen.
I can't.
I
you
can't
know?
either.
I mean,
You're the
usually the
music-
way it works with the one-hit wonders, they had one big one and one half hit.
Not even a half,
But-
not even a B-side.
Yeah, but I couldn't. We're not talking about the Michael Jacksons of the
I
world
know,
and the Paul McCartneys and whatever. But whereas now with streaming, you're only getting paid if people are listening. If people don't listen, you're not getting paid.
Go ahead, because
Well, I was going to say the flip side to that is, as someone who listens to Spotify, is hits can happen a lot faster than they used to. I play some music trivia with Kane at our bowling league sometimes, and we'll hear a song. We'll go, oh yeah, when was that song? Like when that song come out? It'll be like an older song from 70s or 80s. And we'll look at it, and it'll take 4 years before it actually hit the charts because it was slower to get music out to people when you had to go buy a CD or a vinyl at a store.
Sure.
Whereas now I can listen to songs released, I can listen to it instantly, and it can be charting instantly. It doesn't take years to chart now either. But yeah, I like being able to consume
and
everything all at once.
I use Spotify as well. I wasn't like
Yeah,
bad-mouthing
yeah.
them or
Yeah.
anything. I just know
Yeah.
that
but it's not enough
Yeah.
money. They're not
because
getting
it's
paid
pennies
enough.
for the producer.
Yeah.
So I just
Yeah.
didn't know.
Yeah.
Not only has that affected things, but how much, like, is that not give much incentive to, because I've had this conversation with so many friends. Like, when was the last, a lot of people are going to the same shows over and over, and it's like hasn't been that many great rock bands where 20 years ago there were tons of them. And I don't know if streaming is disincentivizing people.
Well, I think streaming has turned into, in many times, including lots of my family members, not meaning Khloe or Kane, but some people are just interested in songs. So they aren't elevating the band. In some cases, they don't even know what band plays that song that they like. They just like listening to that song. And maybe get a second song from that band, then you start taking note. Whereas in the old days, you signed up to the brand. You listened to every AC/DC song on that album, no matter what, and you knew them all. Nowadays, you can just know one song and like that song and not care if the artist is playing through town or not. So it's kind of changed in that way, in a negative way. But at the same time, I think Khloe made a good point that some songs that, let me back up. In order for a song to be a hit, it takes a lot of stages. It takes the band to like it. It takes the singer to want to sing it. It takes the label to want to put money into it. It takes the radio to want to play it. It takes the fan to want to listen to it. Maybe in a movie, maybe on a collection. So it takes a lot of stages for that song to be hit, and you only get maybe 2 shots on a record if you're lucky. Whereas now with streaming, a record can pick up a song can pick up a life of its own very quickly. And that's the wonderful thing as a producer I like, is sometimes there are arguments at the end of an album. What song should be the singles? What song are we going to invest even more money in? What song are we doing a video for? And many times you just do one to launch it, and then you look at the Spotify stats or the streaming stats and go, okay, people have found these 3 songs. Those are clearly the hit songs. And for me, it's wonderful because there's no arguments at that point, because it's difficult to get somebody who wrote this song and somebody that wrote song B. Song B is clearly, in my opinion, the hit song. Song A is not, but that guy's going to champion that song all day long. And if he's the leader of the band, guess which song is going to be the single? Whereas now I have the data to back it up, saying people find this on their own. They chose this song.
So I referred to B-sides earlier for people who don't understand, when they had 45 singles. From what I understand, they had the hit on side A, and they just had to produce a song on side B.
Yeah.
And sometimes the B-side was a bigger hit than the A-side. And the analogy I have with when I write financial blogs, sometimes I'll write a piece and I'm like, this is a Picasso, this is going to be great. And it's crickets.
Right.
And then sometimes I'll put something out that's a couple paragraphs just to put some content out, and it like goes viral and different, like Yahoo Finance picks it up or whatever. So my question to you is, are there sometimes songs that you think are going to be amazing hits that are not, and some that are like, I don't know about this, and it turns out to be a blockbuster?
Always. In fact, Khloe and I have had arguments about my catalog. When I do an album, I let her listen to it. And historically, she doesn't really like a lot of ballady kind of songs. But radio does, and people do. So I'll say, what about this song? Nah, I'm not feeling it. Click, goes on to the next one. Like that's how quick people make a choice, if they like that song or not. But most of the time, I'm right. I have to say.
You have instincts.
Because, well, not just instincts, but history of I'm just not looking for something I like. I'm looking for something I think is going to resonate with people. That's my job. My job is not to do music that I love and want to listen to over and over again. My job is to see who the fan base is for that artist, or see who that artist is, and help them make the best records that can connect with the most people that it will. And in some cases, it's not always music that I like, right? So I'm judging it based on a set of parameters that I think will help that band. I want it to be I want to like it, but sometimes, I don't always like popular stuff either. So I have to accept that. So it's more of a business choice really than artistic choice. Whereas most people listen to it, it's purely, I like it, I don't like it. A or B within 15 seconds. They will like a song or not like a song. Very rarely do you get, 3 minutes. Wait till it gets to the middle section. Nobody's waiting until it gets to the middle section when they're listening to it. They're already skipping it. So I'll wait, but most people don't. So
most people decide right away. I'm fascinated. We can't do this without mentioning the biggest hit. Is that fair to say?
Sure. That's my biggest hit. Yeah.
The cover of the Sound of Silence by Disturbed. Whenever your name comes up in conversation, or I say, I know, they're like, oh my God, everyone loves that song and freaks out. They're like, even friends of mine who are not big music fans, absolutely love that song. So walk me through how that developed, and originally Simon and Garfunkel cover, or just
it's just a Simon and Garfunkel song.
And how did that come about?
How into the weeds do you want me to get on a scale of 1 to 10?
As much as you want. I love hearing the nitty gritty process.
Well, that one's a good example of teamwork in a sense, because, lots of bands like doing one cover song per album, or, and that band doesn't always do a cover song, but Disturbed has done other cover songs. So for the record, we're doing the songs they wrote, and we're always on the lookout for the cover song. And it wasn't chosen at the start of it. We had, we went through about 4 or 5 songs, and then finally the drummer, Mike, says, what about Sound of Silence? And I even believe the true story is his wife mentioned that to him. And if we would have brought, my wife said, what about the Sound of Silence? We probably would have discounted it. But he said that, and then we were all thinking, we somewhat knew the song, and the first line, "Hello, dark, mild friend." I mean, that's such a killer line for a heavy band, right?
Yeah.
And so the singer David said, "Yeah, yeah, maybe. And then he started looking up the lyrics and listening to it. And the guitar player, Dan, said, yeah, we should totally do that. And let's not make it typical.
I was going to say, your first instinct or mine is like it's a ballady, like kind of 70s, you know, that type of like geeky sound. And you guys made it amazing.
Well, I mean,
so, like,
and
how does it
honestly,
get to that
my
process?
first intuition was it's Disturbed. They want to go, hello, darkness, my old choke, 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 you know, make it into like a heavy song.
Yeah.
And it was the guitar player who would be responsible for making it into a heavy song said, no, I don't want to play guitar like that on this song. Let's just do something without it. And, you know, there was a little bit of discussion within the band that some people thought he didn't want to do his job and was just being a little bit lazy. And
I don't want to play today.
that's when the producer comes in, and it was a discussion because we left that one to close to the end and was discussion the whole time. In fact, one of the band members even came to me and said, how come you're not forcing Dan to go out and work on that song? I said, let's just let it take shape. And then we started working on it just from a piano. So originally I played piano on that.
Okay.
And just leaned over, figured out the key that sounded good in David's voice. And then built it up, put some strings on it. Just kind of got it fashioned enough that he could sing to it. Because for me, it's always about that vocal, right? And particularly that song. So, you know, I got it happening. And David, the singer, goes into the vocal booth to sing it, and he starts singing high and starts singing Disturbed style. I said, no, let's just try something new. You know, let's just do it down low. He says, like, how low? Hello, darkness, my old friend. And he started it, nailed it, killed it, loved it, and then we built it up by the end of it. You know, it took us quite a while to kind of come up with that whole flow and the strings and the symphonic stuff,
it builds and the symphonic,
timpani, even some little subtle things that, you know, people in the trade probably aren't even conscious of is how quickly it goes up in tempo. Most songs that a rock band would do starts at one tempo, finishes at that tempo. It's like one static, you know, speed. This one starts slow, and it's just such a gradual tempo change. You don't even notice it getting faster and faster until the end because you're along for that journey, right? You're along for the ride. But the funniest thing was we finished that, thought that we nailed it, and then, you know, the label came in to listen to it and had the play down. And I guarantee you, after that song went by, we're thinking, oh, they're going to hoist us up on their shoulders and say, we're there, the Jolly Good Fellows. They kind of didn't think about it. They didn't. One guy said, I quote, well, it is what it is, I guess. Like that. And then
this is like Bohemian Rhapsody type of story.
The publisher is there, and awesome dude, great publisher, but he's not making any money on that song because it's not his song. It's you know, Paul Simon's song, and whoever had the publishing on that, I don't even know. You know, so he doesn't necessarily want to champion. He wants to champion a song that he's going to be making money on. But you know, it probably wasn't even about that. They just looked at it as a little cover song. Well, isn't that cute? And then again, to go back to what we were just talking about, once the album came out, play. I mean, it rose probably in the rankings like immediately. I'm trying to think
of number one Billboard for a while, right?
It was one for a long time, but it didn't. Nobody thought of it as a single. The band had to say, we want this to be a single, and then they didn't even have to really try that hard because eventually with the Spotify stats or the streaming stats, the label can see, you know, Warner Brothers saying, yeah, people are liking this song. And then it was a no-brainer at that point.
When you were working on it, did you feel it was going to be something special?
Yeah.
And then what happens when they come in and say, oh, that's cute?
I mean,
like, do you send Collections Chloe in with the
no,
to take care of business?
No, I mean, it's not like they said it was bad or they didn't like it. It's just that nobody said this is the one until after it was released and they could see the data.
Oh, yeah, after it's played a million times. Oh, that's the one. Yeah, thanks.
Then
Captain
everybody knew
Hindsight.
it all along, but only we knew it all along, right? And it was wonderful. It was wonderful to see it go. It's like, yeah.
And it's still, like, even dollar-wise, like, it still increases slightly. Like, it's either really steady or it makes a little more money every half. So
you know, there's been remakes.
It does well.
So when you get, like, a dance remake of it, Paul Simon starts making money all over again, but also the band does.
Well, they made a statement. I think they had made a statement that they thanked the band ultimately because they made a ton of money on that song, too, because they wrote it.
I think you told me, I asked you about that when it came out. How does that work when you do a cover? Is there an industry standard to that with, because I know sometimes like people get around it by changing a little bit of the lyrics when it's kind of, I don't know. Maybe I'm talking about something I don't know what I'm talking about, but
No, you generally can't change an existing lyrics of a song. You generally have to ask permission, which doesn't mean you do. You can if you want to, but
let's say standard cover, like Metallica does Turn the Page.
I'll tell you the real problem is this, is that anybody can do someone else's song.
Yeah.
They get paid for it. You can choose Sound of Silence and say I want to do it, and you get a license for it, and you pay them royalties, or the label pays them royalties. But the issue is that the only thing the writers and the publishers can say you can't do is combine it with video, unless they say you can. So you can do a cover song.
What do you mean you can't do a music video?
You can't do a music video for it unless you get a specific approval from the publisher of that song.
But when you do the cover, does Paul Simon get a like an industry standard royalty?
Yeah. That's all like industry standard royalty.
Okay.
In some cases, if they do it right, he might get an advance, but probably not. You just get the royalty off of how many times radio plays it, how many times it gets streamed, uses for it. But again, sometimes if you choose the wrong song and don't get approval ahead of time, you can't do the promo video for it. You can't license it to BMW for their commercial because the artist wants to hang on to their original version as long as they can. Because if you do Hotel California instead of the Eagles miss out on that royalty as a band, and they don't want to do that. So there's many artists. Even Prince was kind of like that too. He wouldn't let other people do his songs or video of his songs. Several artists I can think of. Thankfully, in this case, Paul Simon said we could do a video of it, or Disturbed.
So you have to get the permission from the original.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you choose the wrong song, it kind of hampers your ability to market.
What if the artist has passed? If you're doing something from the 50s or something.
So again, it's the publisher that gets approval of it, or the estate. Whoever owns the estate.
Okay.
One thing that happened to several streaming artists, or not streaming artists, several legacy artists that really kept a tight, close reins on their catalog, and just for purposes. Sometimes people don't want to have a song in a scene in a movie where there's people smoking or drinking. It could be as simple as that. They want to keep the intent of the music pure. But almost in every case, the minute that artist passes away, the estate comes in and it's a free-for-all at that point.
Smoke them if you
want
'em.
this one, you want that one, you want this one. We're open for business.
That leads me into the catalog. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm fascinated. A lot of musicians are doing that. I know you had an integral role in that. How does that come about to want to? So let's say my first question is, you have the music split amongst, let's say, 4 or 5 people. Does everyone have to agree to sell that catalog, or you can sell a piece of your own catalog? Like you can sell.
You want to take that?
Well, I think it's important not to get too
explain it to me,
technical.
please.
Not to
Yeah.
get too
I
technical.
told you I'm going to
but-
ask a lot of stupid questions.
No, of course. There's 2 kind of main royalties to a song. So there's the publishing, which is the songwriting, and then there's the master, which is the actual sound recording. Okay. So you can sell either one of those royalty streams or both.
Okay.
So you don't necessarily have to have approval from everybody. Depending, as an artist, you don't have to have approval from everybody, because you're just selling your portion of it, whatever your percentages or your cut of either of those royalties are. As a producer, if you sell your catalog, you do have to have kind of permission. You can still do it. The songwriting you can sell no matter what. That's your own permissions. But the master royalty, you did kind of have to have some permission from everybody.
What are the 2 different ones you said? The masters.
The master is the sound
the
recording. Yeah.
And what's the other one?
The publishing, which is the songwriting.
Songwriting. Okay.
The composition.
And usually people sell both?
One or the other, or both.
In some cases, they don't have both. So say in The Sound of Silence, I didn't write that song.
Yeah.
So I can't sell that. I'd like to sell that, but
So he just sold the master.
so I sold my portion of the master.
Some artists, if you're signed to a major label or a label in general, they may own the masters. That's like a common thing in the music business, is owning your masters, owning your song, your rights.
Sure.
So the label might own the masters, but the artist can still sell their songwriting, their publishing. So you can sell. That's why I say one or the other, because it depends on what you actually are allowed to sell based on who owns what. But generally, you can sell one or the other.
Usually,
or
the
both.
producer owns the masters. Usually,
No,
Or
the
re- or
producer
record-
almost never owns
or the record label.
Usually the record label owns it. If the band has some leverage and they can do it on their own, like pay for the recording and all that, then usually their best deal is to create it themselves and license it to the label for a certain amount of years. Then they fully own it. Then say after 10 years, after 15 years, they get to sell 100% of that. Whereas historically, a label would own approximately, it's, every deal is different. There's no rules, but let's say the label owns 80% of it. The artist only owns 20. They can really only sell the 20% of that for the rest of their lives. But once you're a band with leverage, like a Metallica, you don't need the label to kick you $1 million to make a record because you can pay for it yourself. So why not pay for it yourself, own it all, and then license it to the label for a certain amount of time? I'm not saying that's what they did, but that kind of band that has leverage like that can do that, and that means you get it in the end. So it may be more valuable in 10 to 15 years, than it is now. So why let the label have all that joy, right?
Sure. In business, when a company IPOs, they have to figure out the valuation. It can be done on peers. It could be done on revenues. It could be done on, price to sales. So how do you determine valuation for selling the catalog?
Yeah, you take all the royalty streams that come in over. We ended up doing 5 years across 5 years, but the standard generally is about 3 years. And then you take your 1 year average of what those income streams are. So just all the, like I said, either the songwriting or the master royalty.
And is there like a certain, whatever price to sales, multiple like that type of thing? And is it maybe a little bit higher if it's like, because I know Billy Joel, I've heard like, I'm holding out for $1 billion or whatever his number. I've heard different numbers.
He'll get it in the end.
Springsteen sold some of his recently.
Oh, did he?
I think.
I never heard that. I heard Dylan sold, and
Okay.
I heard lots of people have been selling.
So if it's like a name like that, is there a little bit more of a multiple?
Yeah. Like a producer is going to probably get significantly less than a really, really well-known artist like a Justin Bieber, or it was a Queen that sold recently too in the last couple of years.
Yeah, maybe it was Queen. Yeah, there's a lot that have sold.
So no, there's definitely more. It's a sliding scale. There's not an industry like, okay, you get this number and then we're going to multiply it by 10 or anything. It's so varied.
And it's varied per type of song. A pop song in the writing may come around several times. I mean, if you own the publishing for I Will Survive, that song will survive forever. Yeah. So that's really valuable, that one, because how many artists have done that? Or even like a jazz standard, like, My Funny Valentine. I think there's like 600 versions of that song. So that's valuable in a whole different way than a rock song. Even if the rock song this year's made more money than one of those legacy songs, the legacy song will be there forever. The rock song might not. So, you have to kind of know what you're buying. Rock songs generally stand the test of time better than a pop song than most pop songs, because pop songs are flavor of the month. Back in Black is never going away. Yeah. Thunderstruck is going to be played at every stadium, every NHL stadium in Canada or America for probably the rest of time. Enter Sandman is not going away. Whereas your latest pop hit might go away.
I like your idea of Back in Brown. Maybe we could do that and sell it to UPS. What do you think?
That's a good idea.
I was thinking. We just came up with an idea right here on the podcast. So who's the usual buyer of these catalogs? Is it private equity? Is it like record labels? Like, is there a standard like of who's usually looking to, like, so-and-so sells for this amount? Who's usually buying it?
I would say majority of them are private equity firms, but there are some publishing companies that are buying them. I don't know, like the publishing companies, is it the actual publishing company that offered, or was it a fund?
Or do you bid it out?
So originally
we bid it out.
Completely bid out, because you want the highest.
Of course.
You want as many offers
like
as you can
right?
get.
Yeah.
But I think historically it's been other publishing companies or conglomerates buying other publishing catalogs, right? They know the value. They know how to evaluate it. They know how to, they know what's valuable, what's not. And not only that, they can exploit it. They're already exploiting their catalogs that they own. They just add this new song into their list of.
So it's private equity that specializes in music. So like some will specialize in software usually, or some might be in biotech. This is specifically mostly music.
Again, I think originally it was labels and publishers buying these catalogs.
Yeah.
Then it turned into when the money was cheap Actually, that's where streaming really won. That's where streaming helped all of us. Like before streaming, as a producer, I probably couldn't sell my catalog the way I have been able to now. But equity firms started getting involved, hedge funds, because the music, especially during COVID, we proved that music will last through anything. Music's not going away. So it's almost like buying a bond. So if you find that song, Sound of Silence, Hotel California, Back in Black.
It's a dividend that keeps paying.
It's a dividend, and if it's particularly if it's managed right, it should increase in value, and it's a great inflation hedge because as inflation moves up, all of a sudden Spotify is not $10 a month. All of a sudden it's $12. All of a sudden it's $15 a month. Yeah. So those songs will rise with the value of inflation, even if the market's going down. You know, if those songs are getting played, those, let's call them story of our lives songs, that people that, like I said, are playing Back in Black in their truck now, probably was playing it when they were 18 in their truck too, and they're still playing it, right? So it's a great inflation hedge, and these, you know, business people are looking at those. Even life insurance companies, they're looking at those people that only want like a 6% or are okay with a 4 to 6% return. This is generally music's more than that. You know, they can arrange it. They're buying it at a multiple low enough that, you know, okay, so for 6 years they're paying it off, and then after that it's free cash, right?
Great cash flow.
Yeah, it can be really great cash flow.
And that's only on existing stuff. So if you do new stuff, you can put out 10 more albums and sell that catalog later, correct?
Yeah, you generally want like a couple years of data, so you don't want to sell anything that's too new because there's not enough data to make an average from it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so even with his sale, we still retained, I don't know, 4 years of titles because they were too new at the time. And if he makes any more music, then we'll keep those.
So you can keep
and
some
we can sell them later.
and sell later, and then new stuff
Bundle
over
it up
time.
again.
Put a little
Yeah.
put a little progressive from Flow bundle together.
Yeah, and then even the company that bought most of my catalog, I mean, they're ready for the next bundle too, right? If it performs well for them, then it's an easy sell the next time because it's very similar what I kept. It's very similar to what I already had, or what I sold. So. You know, it was really during the price discovery of my catalog that I started really becoming involved in the business of music and Khloe as well, because it was so fascinating to me, the songs that performed well, the songs that made money. You're looking at your catalog, some hits are going down in value, some non-hits are going up in value. I was surprised that I had some non-singles that just every year make more and more money. People find them, right? They just like those songs. And some hits that you thought were going to last eternally, all of a sudden 1 year, it's a drop in plays. But that's the other thing that streaming has done, is it lets people repetitively play those things. Think about it, in the old days, you sell a record to a person, you're never making money from that person ever again, unless it gets all scratched up. But whereas now, if they keep listening to Back in Black over and over again, and that's the generation of band that really knocked it out of the park, because they sold records, and they sold tapes, and then in some cases they sold 8 tracks, and then CDs came out, they resold it all over again. Back in Black sold again for CDs, maybe some DAT tapes back in the day, and then all of a sudden streaming. And so now I don't even have a CD player, so I have to stream it. I'm streaming, and people play just as much as they did back in the day. If you only had that first record you sold, not as valuable, right? And as a producer, not as valuable. But now, when my catalog gets played a certain amount of times, and we're talking billions, a certain amount of times over and over again, that becomes value for the rest of time. Whereas in the old days, it was hard to know how many people were still going to buy, you know, Back in Black or the Black Album.
Yeah.
All Things Black.
Yeah.
You know, what does that translate into sales in 10 years? But you can kind of tell how that translates into streams now. And that's what lets us sell the catalogs as a business instead of just music as art.
Wow. It's fascinating. People are going to watch this and they're going to say, you're young, you're awesome, successful, powerful business manager, musician.
Well, they're not going to say I'm young.
I'm not looking at you. What advice would you give someone who wants to maybe follow that path, or even like 2 or 3 amazing lessons you've learned so far?
Don't follow the path. No. I always say I want to get out of it all the time because it's a really, you know, corrupt industry, we'll say, and
A lot of industries
as all
are.
business
A lot
industries
of
are.
Yeah,
But
there's no music's.
Joe's in business.
No, but
How corrupt is that?
Everything. I mean, I don't know. I believe that's a whole other podcast.
yeah.
But anything you would like, any lessons you've learned, or
I think overall, I've been doing this now 12 years or something, somewhere around there. I think it's just really important to stay true to what you think is morally correct. And I think that will show over the years. If you're always doing the right thing and you can sleep at night, your career will reflect that because people will trust you, people will hire you, people will rely on you for things. Whereas if you start burning those bridges or start making some bad decisions or some bad moves, it'll crumble really fast. You might have short-term success, but overall, someone's going to find out or someone's going to catch something or you're going to, corner yourself. And I think that really is important in probably any industry, but especially in music. There's just a lot of trust that has to go around. And I think no matter any of the business decisions, the education, the music, it always still comes down to, did you do the right thing? And can you live with yourself and sleep at night peacefully?
Yeah.
I think that's really probably the most important thing and gets me through every day. I mean, every day I have to make a hard decision and go, all right, can I sleep if I say this to this person? Or,
No, that's a great point.
We touched on crypto earlier, so we have a few minutes left to end on a little crypto. Talk about your involvement. You had crypto mining in your. I remember visiting you in your studio.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I knew you in those days or not. I know.
I remember you telling me you had something going on with some.
Yeah.
So talk a little.
Yeah, you came to that studio where I had the miners, and I don't think I had them at the time when you were there. But I mean, I've been I wouldn't say an OG, not since 2009, but probably about 2014, right when Mt. Gox, was rising to fame, and Bitcoin to me made complete sense early on, and I had some people around me that were into it, and I thought, man, this for sure is the future. It was a little different of a situation where to me, I used to call it hippie coin. Because for us earlier guys, it's like it's going to even the playing field for the world as far as currencies, as far as bank accounts, as far as being able to move money around, as far as being free with your money, actually having your money. You still can't go into a bank and say, I want to take out all my money in cash. You have to prepare. You have to prepare them for it. You have to say, I'm going to come on so-and-so day. You have to sign a form saying what you're going to do with that money. They got to report it to the government. I mean, all those things to me seemed like you don't really have your money. Someone else has your money.
Yeah. And
they're giving you access to it. And I thought Bitcoin works great. I mean, it's not even in your phone, in many cases. I mean, I kind of hold all mine offline. I don't in cold storage. I don't have it on any centralized exchanges, although I did for many years. And I was even part of it when Mt. Gox got hacked and they went down. I lost 100 Bitcoins in that day. So 100 Bitcoins as of today, I mean, we're on Liberation Day, so we're a little less right now, but
85,
that'd be like $83 million, or sorry, $8.3 million that I would have had I not.
So Mt. Gox at the time was one of the largest exchanges. It was based in Japan, I believe.
Exactly, yeah.
And they did I heard 70-80% of all the transactions at the time.
They were the big player. Not only that, is that the reason why I went to that exchange, I started out in Coinbase, but then I saw the price discrepancies between Mt. Gox and Coinbase, and I was all thinking I was all brilliant and I was going to arbitrage this and I was going to send cash to Japan, buy the Bitcoin, send it over to Coinbase, sell it,
Because there was a big spread.
There's a big spread between the exchanges all around the world. So I just had to figure out how to MacGyver this. And it was exceptionally difficult in those days because, of course, the banking problem as far as, doing those kind of things, seeing that kind of money flow into banks. I mean, I couldn't find a bank in America at that time that would do it. So I gave up on that, but I still kind of sent some money. During that process of trying to make it work, that's how I ended up with a whole bunch of coins at Mt. Gox. And then all of a sudden the rug got pulled, as it happened over and over again in different situations. And I was holding the bag and,
Were you able to recover any of it?
I got 13 and a half back.
Okay.
Around. So,
all right.
So by the time I got them back, there were so much more. I still ended up making a lot of cash, so I was happy with that. But But even during that time when they were being held up in bankruptcy court and all that, that's when I started to mine and started to become even more interested in it. So, it was pretty tough to explain to my wife what, where her money was going. Even now, she's not thrilled about it because I'm a hodler. I don't sell, right? I'm not using that money. That's my savings money. And she says, why can't we spend it? I said, we can, but when we run out of money in the bank, then we'll spend that money. If we don't run out of money in the bank, we're not going to spend it. We're not going to spend the coins. And it's worked out well. So over time, she's seen the success of that. And, as we've gone from, I think my first I bought was $1,000. And, now we're at.
I remember talking to you earlier, and Bitcoin was like in that 1,000, 1,500 range.
Do you remember what you said at that time? If you were convinced?
I don't remember what I said. Did I say something that?
No, I don't recall. No, that's why.
No, you were like hardcore into it, and
Yeah.
I was fascinated because I was not involved back then, and it was early on though.
I could not find a financial advisor who would have anything to do with it forever.
It's
even
taken
recently.
a while to. It's only been recently. There's like 5 or 10 ETFs and what's BlackRock and some of these big Fidelity and so forth have got involved, and the new administration's become more crypto friendly. But that's what 15 years it's taken.
It's taken a long time to be right.
Yeah.
So far.
So far.
It could change tomorrow. But.
What do you mostly, if you don't mind me asking, mostly Coinbase you use now, or you have storage?
No, I'm actually mostly a Kraken guy.
Okay.
I've been with Kraken for a long time, but honestly, since the Mt. Gox days, I spread it across.
You spread it
everything.
out.
So even Bitstamp back in the day, I mean, I was always trying to find an angle of how to make all this work, right? So pretty much all the exchanges I've been, I still am a member at.
Yeah.
I just found Kraken the best at the time.
Okay.
And even
so if the
now.
Kraken people are watching, we're looking for a sponsor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a great customer. I mean,
this is great. This podcast is a great ad for crypto and Back in Black right now.
yeah, and I don't even make any money off Back in Black, so I shouldn't even be advertising that. But I think Kraken's had it right in a lot of ways. And in the early days, their trading fees were low, so that's why I was on board there early on. Coinbase was easier for the average person to onboard to, but more expensive. And Gemini, I'm a Gemini fan too, but then I got caught up in the Gemini Earn program. I don't know if
I've heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Khloe, my business manager, was advising me at the time, and you could get 8%, just holding the, what was it? GBTC.
Yeah.
Whatever
that ETF.
Sorry, GUSD. Whatever the Gemini dollar was.
Oh yeah. That's
so.
right. No, yeah.
It wasn't in crypto. It was in a stable coin, and so I thought, well, I could just hold my cash there. And it went great for a while until they got rug pulled. And
For the record, I think I advised you not to do it.
I think you might have advised.
I was going
me
to
not
say,
to.
what's your thoughts on this being involved?
That's a good question.
I'm generally okay with it. This is totally probably not what you're going to want to hear, but I see all stocks and crypto and all that as a form of gambling.
Okay.
And so I always just tell, my clients and people is I do it. I love it. I think other people should do it too, but don't do it if it means you could lose your house. So don't put every last cent you have into something like crypto. Make sure you can still fund your life. And so to me, I see it as side money that you know that you could lose tomorrow. If you're cool losing that, not cool because no one wants to lose,
no.
but know that you're not going to lose your home because you lost it overnight, then it's fine. But I have some clients who want to spend every dime they have into the stock market. And I just get nervous because one day you just don't know what's going to happen the next day.
Today.
If you need to access that money and it's not there, you need to be okay with that. So I know it's not gambling, but I kind of explain it to my clients like you're kind of gambling. So let's just use the free money we
want it to
have.
be a little
Let's use your profit
diversified.
this month. Let's not use your mortgage payment.
Okay. So you want them to be involved like real estate, other stuff.
I generally,
spread it out or a little bit more.
Oh, totally. I think everything should be diversified. I mean, down to even having some gold in your closet somewhere. I think
this is a whole lot. We could do like 10 podcasts
it's
right
No gold in our closet, just for the record, if anybody knows where I live.
yeah, no, I think it's important to diversify.
It's in the hidden safe under the carpet.
But diversify with your free money and your bonus money and the money you made that month, not with the money that you want to put into your kid's college fund or, or keep your house.
See, she's not quite Michael Saylor level yet, But I'm the Michael Saylor level. If I didn't have my wife, giving me the brakes for my gas,
Yeah.
that I would have everything.
He says when you wake up
Bitcoin.
in the morning,
Yeah.
forget all your hopes, forget all your dreams, and just buy more Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That's kind of what he says in every interview.
I'd be one of those guys mortgaging
Don't
the
even go
house.
to the studio. Don't even go to the hockey games. Just buy more Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That would be you?
Yeah, I'm that guy.
Okay.
And this is why people have business managers
she's
and financial
the voice
advisors.
of reason.
I mean, that's the thing about the music industry, looping back around, is that it's a lot of creative people. It's a lot of energetic people and with crazy ideas. And that's why they're good. That's why they can write a good song. That's why they can perform and do the things that they do. And we need the people to balance us out. And again, I'm usually the gas and she's the brakes. Or
I
my
say
wife is
no
the
a
brakes.
lot to a lot of people all day. No,
But that takes confidence.
Maybe
that takes
next month.
That takes experience. It takes, again, that's a gift. So that's really good, though. That's a good, like you said, balances things out. I asked her any sort of advice. I'll leave you with the final words because we do have to finish this up. As far as with your experience, anyone wanting to get into the industry or any life lessons that you want to, 2 or 3 you'd pass along?
Well, you're lucky because generally I would respond with don't, much like Khloe said, because it's not always easy. But I think I've gotten over that hurdle. I mean, I've been so blessed. I've done so well. I have nothing. I'm so happy with the way that my life turned out. Right. There's no problem there, and it can be. You only get beat up if you let yourself get beat up. And I think that people should do what they love and what they want to do. But I think you have to know that going in, that it's not, if you love making music and that's all, and you have no other plan, I mean, really do it. If you have no plan B or C, then you should be in music, right? But don't expect it to get rich off it. Don't expect you not to have hurdles and bumps in the road. Take all that stuff, embrace it, and go along for the ride and live your best life every day. If that means writing songs and living in a trailer or a van down by the river, go do that. So I believe in really doing what feeds your soul at this point in time. And I got lucky that I did well, financially too. But do what makes you happy and keep doing that. You're happy every day. You're happy every day. What more do you want?
There you go. Amen. I had a lot of fun. I can't thank you guys enough for doing this. I feel like we could go on for another 3 hours talking about, we didn't even get into the business of the studio and the collection agency. Over here.
Well, not to mention like AI music.
Yeah.
Now there's so many things to talk about in the business of music now. It's crazy. So.
Oh yeah. No, so I hope if it's okay with you guys, we'll do this again soon and talk about some other
it was fun.
topics. This is engaging, fascinating stuff. So thank you for your humility. Thank you for your awesomeness. Thank you for being here and for being great friends. And we'll hopefully do it again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.